Hi everyone, welcome back to the WeNight YouTube channel. My name is Jennifer Dominic. I am the founder of WeNight and I'm also going to be your interviewer for today. Really excited to have you here with us. For those of you who are watching the WeNight YouTube channel for the first time, you're watching part of a series of videos of careers insights that show what a day in the life of someone in a role within STEM looks like, and also shares a little bit about how they managed to get to their current career to date. Today we have Jackie. Jackie currently works as a compliance lead within the EUCAN or Europe and Canada region at a pharmaceutical company. Jackie has 21 years of industry experience and is going to be sharing with us today what a day in her life looks like and also how she managed to make her way to her current role today over the last couple of years. Thank you, Jackie, for coming on board today. Really excited to have you. Jackie, could you just share a little bit more about yourself and tell us who you are? Who's Jackie McCallum?
My name is Jacqueline McCallum. I work at MSD in Europe. I'm currently the Regional Business Practices Lead for the EUCAN region, so covering 31 markets across Europe and Canada. I've been in pharma for, I was counted this up yesterday, 21 years. I've done a lot of, I've had a very sort of broad career, and we'll probably touch on that through our conversation. In terms of what I enjoy, I love problem solving, I love working with the business, I love learning, I love working with different people and being exposed to different ideas and different cultures. My interests or the things that make me really excited are social mobility is really important to me because of my own lived experience. I'm also part of the neurodiversity EBRG at MSD, and how we can improve accessibility and opportunity for our neurodiverse people in the workplace, and also candidates coming forward to work with us. And one of my daughters is neurodivergent, and that was my rationale for starting to get involved with that. And the more I learn about it, the more fascinating it is, because for so long, these, I'm going to call them qualities because they've often been seen as maybe a hindrance or detrimental, but actually it's just it's another difference. It's not, and quite often it's a really positive thing. And like all differences, I can't ride a bike to save my life, but I can walk for miles. So it just, you get people doing the thing that plays to their strengths. So so that's a little bit about me. I've been in my current role for 9 months. And I'm very much still learning on the job. It was a new role as well, so I came into this role and there wasn't a predecessor for me. So yeah, it's been quite interesting.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think what I'd love to do is get into that backwards. So talk to us a little bit about what a day is like in the current role that you've just taken off.
It very much depends whether I'm in the office or at home. I'm probably about, because I'm in a regional role, I'm probably in the office about 20% of the time, although that usually works out maybe 2 days one week and then at home the following week. And that's been a post-pandemic thing. Remote working can be a struggle, but my commute is about an hour each way. And so if I'm at home, it'll be on the computer sometime, usually about 8, half 8. Sometimes, very occasionally, I'll have a 7 a.m. Call if I'm working with Eastern Europe, but it's usually that, going through my to-do list, like everyone. But it can be, there's a variety of things. I do spend a lot of time on Teams and listening. So I'm currently involved with some quite meaty projects. So we are changing the CRM system that we use for the big 6 markets, with which the UK is one, and migrating them onto a different version of Viva CRM. And that's brought with it, it's been incredibly time consuming. It's one of those things that at first glance you think that's going to be quite straightforward. But so navigating the cultural differences, the ways of working, the individual ways of working in each market's been quite entertaining. So I spend a lot of time on Teams. I spend a fair bit of time prepping slides, pulling together information, looking at global policies, analysing some data as well. I don't look at every market, but I do get summary reports of all the compliance data for my region, and you can imagine that's huge. So I kind of look at that for trends. I work with Global Compliance, who are mainly based out of Kenilworth in New Jersey or Ireland. So I have lots of calls with them talking about things that we're seeing coming through in the data, and sometimes having quite robust conversations, is that the word, around when is it an issue. And I spend a lot of my time asking, okay, so what is the risk that you are trying to manage here? Because sometimes people see things in data that don't always reflect it. So data analysis, a lot of listening. I try not to talk too much, which I'm clearly not doing well at this morning. And looking at policy, talking with global legal and regional legal counsel to think about, again, the impact on the markets and on working practices of changes that are coming in from internal policy, but also influences from the external environment as well. So no 2 days are the same in terms of the content, but because of the remote working, it can feel like I spend a lot of time just sitting at my wee desk here at home. So yeah, that's kind of a day, really.
It's a day, it's a week and a month, and I think you gave us a really good variety of how some of those bits might look like. Maybe another question I might ask as well is, what is compliance or business practices to someone who doesn't understand that?
You're okay. So at MSc there is a difference. So compliance is about adherence with policy and law and regulation. Business practices is very similar, but there's a nuance there. So business practices is really around the how we do our business and what is the most effective way to do it in terms of resources. And sometimes that means managing risk. A lot of the time it means managing risk, which is why compliance and business practices are conflated. In fact, my job title is it's in a compliance branch, but officially compliance sits with legal at MSD. So I work very closely with my counterpart in region, Brian Daly, and we have discussions about how this impacts. So there's a lot of thinking about, I will look at something and I'll use my own experience from working in a market as to how that might work in practice. And then I have to go away and have conversations, because not every market is the UK, which is where I came from. So business practices is sort of how we actually do the stuff, the process, the following things through, the analysing data, looking at how we can do things better. And compliance is the right and wrong part, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Even I've learned the difference between both as well, because I often kind of put them together. So really clear explanation. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about how your journey to this point came about. How did you get into compliance?
Excuse me. It was I kind of stumbled into it. So when I first started at Pharmacia in 2001, which is now Pfizer, I was a medical rep, and I did that for three and a bit years. I was a terrible sales rep. I'm very much okay, here's the data. It's good, take it or leave it. I'm not kind of yeah. I'm very sort of direct in that sense. But I enjoyed it, and I was very fortunate in that on my patch I used to sell tramadol, and on my patch I had the Royal National Orthopaedics. So I was the #1 rep in the country, just by the sheer virtue of the fact that I had this huge orthopaedic hospital on my territory. So I did that for 3.5 years, and I realised I wasn't enjoying being on the road at all. And I applied for a job in medical information at Sharing Plough, which is now MSD. And it was 5 minutes from my house in Welwyn Garden City, and I was very fortunate to get that job, and I absolutely loved it. So I did that for another 3.5, 4 years. Had my second child in the process. So she was born in 2006, and medical information is not terribly well paid. So I was basically working to pay for my childcare, and I really enjoy working, and I always have. And I knew that it wasn't for me. Being a stay-at-home mum wasn't for me at all. And at that point in time, it wasn't really the done thing to do part-time. We didn't have the flexible working approaches that we have now. So so I a better paid job came up at ASI in medical affairs, and I ended up going there in 2008, and I was a European, worked in medical affairs and medical information at ASI again for about another 4 years, doing lots of different things, planning for congresses, writing formulary packs, just lots of exciting stuff. Got the head of medical information job there, and created a team, realised that I actually quite enjoy line management. And just kind of, was keen to progress my career there. Then, and on a more personal level, I had a bout of septicemia, and that really makes you, life-changing events like that really make you evaluate what you want to do. And I've been doing a lot of travel with work, and my daughters were quite young, and I thought, actually, I need a UK job. I need something based in the UK, because my husband was traveling at the time as well. And so I went to AstraZeneca, to their medical information and pharmacovigilance group, and did that for a little bit, and realised that's where I sort of started to dabble in compliance, and thought it was really interesting, and wanted to sort of move more into that area. But there weren't any vacancies coming up, and my husband's job was really starting to take off. I was working long hours and things at AZ. I mean, it was a great job, but in the end I decided to go independent and contract to get that flexibility that I needed when the girls were at primary school. So I went, set myself up, set up my own company, and did consulting, freelancing for off and on for about 5 years. Did lots of, from project management at the BMA and the British Medical Association. They were that would have been for the 2015 election. We've had so many general elections that I've lost track. Through to working with lots of different companies. I can't name any of them because I can't tell you who my clients were, but got the opportunity to do things like advisory boards, lots of medical writing, working on payer materials and campaigns, doing payer advisory boards as well. I set up a registry for inflammatory bowel disease, and engaged a few different pharma companies to fund that. So, I just had lots of, at the time you're thinking, oh, it was driven by my needs to keep working and also make sure I was bringing in some money into the house, but also some of the jobs you take on when you're independent, you're like, oh, I'm just doing this because it pays the bills. And then there's other things that you realize that, wow, this is amazing. And there's lots to learn from it. So I did that. And then Richard Rabinski, who I'd worked with at Sharing Plough, got in touch to say, we've got a vacancy for a business practices manager for 6 months. We need some help implementing some changes post-audit. Would you come in? And so I did. I came in a 6-month contract at the beginning of 2017, and I'm still here. And it was more about, it wasn't so much about compliance at that point. It was having wide understanding of the industry. And I've worked sort of from when I was contracting, I did some stuff in clinical trials as well. And I know that's your background. So I've kind of done from the sort of phase 3 clinical trial stuff right through to the rep work. And I've done a bit of pharmacovigilance as well. I've not done regulatory. That's kind of scary, as is everything when you don't know about it. So I've been really fortunate that through not having any sort of firm career plan, and I've spoken about this quite candidly in interviews, when both of you are working parents, someone's career takes a bump. And it was mine, because my husband earned more than me. It just made sense. And I was quite happy for that to happen. But what it meant was that there were times that I was a bit frustrated or felt a bit like, I don't really know where I'm going with this. But ultimately, it works out. I think you end up where you need to be. So that's, and since I've been at MSD, I was made permanent. And I was offered a permanent position 3 or 4 months into my 6-month contract, and I thought, I'm going to take it. Then they were recruiting for a head of business practices for the UK. I applied for that and went through the process. I did that. I spent a very short time in the strategy office last year before this job in EUCAN came up, and I've been really, really lucky to have good sponsorship and support at MSD as well. So it's really helped. So that's how I'm sitting here in my attic talking to you today.
It's really, really insightful, Jackie. Once again,
I can't hear you. Oh, you're back. Sorry.
Yeah, I just keep saying it's really insightful. I'm learning a lot about you in this process that I really didn't know. Really, really diverse journey up until date. Because I guess I came across you in the head of business practices role when I kicked off as well. So really great to hear. We touched a little bit earlier around some of your passion for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and you spoke about neurodiversity and social mobility. Just in terms of when we're thinking about the external environment or the reality that we all live in within society, and you think of the workplace, what role do you think diversity and inclusion should be playing within the workplace? How have you seen that positively impact your role, and where do you think we could do better at times?
That's a great question, because it's really tough to answer in a politically correct sort of way. So diversity and equity and inclusion I think it's critical for businesses to survive, because you need different perspectives, and not only that, you need people to be aware that there are other perspectives other than their own. So for me, I come from very humble roots. I grew up in the postcode G22, which was very high. I think it's the highest actually on the deprivation index at that time, in the sort of late 80s and early 90s. And I was very fortunate. Education, you know, I was reasonably bright at school. Teachers liked me, and because I believe it or not, I was well behaved, and I worked hard, and I had a lot of support to get to university. I was the first in my family to do that. But as I've gone through my career, I've met lots of people where, you know, I've spoken to people and they're like, oh yeah, so I had this work experience, and you know, my, or people whose dads have you know, or parents have worked, but it's usually their fathers have worked in the organisation and facilitated a path. And even now I see it with my own children. So my daughters are now 20 and 16, and I see me being able to provide them with opportunities that I wouldn't have had, because my mum was unemployed, my auntie was a cleaner, and my uncle was a janitor. I couldn't have told you what corporate life, or had even a glimpse of it. And I, you know, as you can hear, I'm obviously Scottish, and there's some cultural differences there as well. We have slightly different ways of thinking. We're very self-deprecating. We're also very, very pragmatic. So I find it difficult sometimes when I go into calls, maybe like US colleagues, and they're super positive, or the Australians are super positive as well. And I'm like, no, no, no. But then I have to sort of check myself and think, actually, am I just being cynical here? You know, and think about things that way. And it sounds really soft, but I do think that we miss something, and we can, you know, just the mix of ideas, the different ways of thinking. And this job, the business practices job in the UK in particular, so I'm quite, this is how you do it. This is you know, this is the process. This is how you do it. But sometimes, and when I've been managing people or coaching people, and I've given them something to do, and I've delegated a task to them and said, yep, go make it so. This is kind of what we're looking at. Come back, we'll have catch ups. And then I've had to check myself, because halfway through I'll check in with the person and they're doing it in a way that I wouldn't have done it. And I can, you know, the first couple of times it happened, I could feel myself, I could feel my hackles kind of rise, going, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. But then you realise, actually, this is going to result in possibly a better outcome. And I think as long as you're, you know, being aware and conscious of that, and whether it's, you know, cultural differences, whether it's, you know, neurodivergence, whether it's, you know, just different backgrounds or being taught a different way, I think keeping that open mind is absolutely critical. So that there's two aspects for me, there's two aspects to DE&I. One is what people bring, but also trusting our colleagues to be open-minded and accepting of how we think and how we do things, and having those really quite open conversations. So, you know, I've said to someone, that's not how I would have done it, but that's amazing. That's better than how I would have done it. Or, you know, sometimes like, yeah, that's not how I would have done it. It's going to result in the same outcome. And sometimes it's, yeah, you need to do it this way. So because it is going to. So, but I think that open-mindedness is absolutely critical. And also, I think what concerns me is that sometimes people, again, conflate DE&I with positive discrimination, and it's not about that. It's about accessibility to opportunity and giving everyone an equal chance to have a crack or a bite at the cherry. And then it's up to the individual. You can provide the opportunity and the access, but it's up to the person, the individual, to go for it. So, and if that means supporting them, or you know, giving reassurance or confidence, or for a neurodivergent person, providing a better environment for them to work in, a quieter environment, or maybe, you know, better lighting, so be it. I just think we can be better.
Thanks, Jackie.
Did that answer the question?
It does, and it answers it from a perspective that I hope that others listening learn a little bit more about D&I. interestingly, in recent conversations I've had in terms of students when they're thinking of the career, D&I, the way it's spoken about in the workplace or for professionals or people who have had life experience, is quite different to how students perceive D&I when they've been in university. So something I've also learned is that it's a term that they're getting used to as well. And they're understanding it. And so they're coming into the workplace and they're trying to understand the concept of it. Whilst some people might have experienced it, they didn't know there was a thing. And so that's what really, I feel really good around the way you've kind of explained the perspectives and the roles and how different people can contribute to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you. All right, so I think to round up, what will be really good to hear from you, firstly, is what do you hope that sharing your story with us here will do for others who watch? And then following on from that, what does the future hold?
I'm going to answer the last one first. What does the future hold? I honestly don't know. I plan to stay in this role a little bit longer and keep learning. And with regard to what I hope people watching would get out of this, one is if anyone wants to ask me any questions about either my lived experience or if I can support them in some way or encourage them, please do get in touch. And I guess, I think I find it really hard putting myself out there. So I can't believe that I volunteered to do this, because I like to sort of fly low under the radar. But I've worked with you and I really respect, and, I think what you're doing is amazing at We Night. So I really wanted to support that. But, really that's it. If there's anyone that either thinks they can't do it or they need help to do it or they're not sure even if they should do it, get in touch with me. I might not have the answer, but I probably know who to ask, or I'll know someone else. I've got a good network, and I'm not shy, even though I don't like putting myself out there. So that would really be it. It's just, and if I was to say something, based on my experience, it would be that lots of people think you need to have your future mapped out. I was 49 this week and still figuring out, I'm still figuring out what I want to do, and I'm having great fun finding out along the way. So, because I remember having a conversation with David, who we both used to work with, and he said, so what do you want to do 2 jobs from now? I was like, I've got no idea. So and it helps if you do know, but if you don't know, don't panic. It's all good.
Thanks, Jackie. And is there anything else you'd like to share or say that we've not already covered?
No, I think we've been pretty exhaustive. I feel like I've laid myself bare, and I'd just like to say to anybody watching this, I don't always sound like this either. So my voice will hopefully be back next week. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.